Good afternoon, America, and good morning, Australia. You're back on Radio Toni, and this is a conversation with Kez. My gorgeous co-host is Kez Wickham St. George, and she is an international best-selling writer. She's an author coach, and she is my collaborator in chief on this show, which we like to showcase authors when they turn up for their live interview. Okay, because Kevin and I love talking to you anyway. Now, Kez Wickham St. George is the driver of her own creativity, and her passion is to inspire and nurture others to tell their stories. And she's incredibly good at it. Her values are simple. When you touch a heart, you can change a life. And by encouraging you to write or journal, her belief is it will only add value to your life. So, good morning, Kez, or good afternoon if we were in America.
It's early morning here, Toni.
It is
It's just after 7 o'clock, but I'm up and I'm awake and I'm just dying to talk to you on this show. I just love talking to you.
We do love having a good chat. And today we thought that we would actually delve into the finer points of writing. And for those of you that are listening, we thought that we'd cover on this show how you develop a storyline, a plot, the characters, and the background that gives your story the colour, diversity, and depth that it needs. Now, I've only written one book, so I consider my co-host Kez the expert in this realm. And she does this outside of talking on the radio to me. She has a little stable of authors that she encourages and nurtures and mentors and helps them get their book to a point that it's ready for publication. So, Kez, let's start talking about this whole idea of writing your own book. It comes to many of us as a thought that hangs around for many, many, many years, and it tends to not happen on the spur of a moment because for many of us, that thought of putting our words into our thoughts and our into words is a scary thing. So, there's when you meet that aspiring author, what's some of the first steps you take them through?
I find out what sort of genre they want to write and whether it's about themselves or whether it's
Yes.
fiction, fantasy. So let's look at myself. My first book was a rather large bio on my journey and how I overcame the fact that I was, although not recognized when I was a child, but it was bullying and abuse. But it was what was accepted then. So when I wrote about it, it was not accepted. And people were horrified that I went through that. But I was no different from the next door neighbor kids. If you were naughty and got discovered, that was the big thing, and got discovered being naughty, you got a hiding or you got a whack of some sort or something was thrown at you. It made you stand up and pay attention. Thought you won't do that again if someone's looking, so you didn't do it again. But when authors, and again, the strategy was I had written for the New Zealand government just before that, and the book had been. I can't say it was published. It was sort of published within the in the compounds of some sort of welfare society, like schooling. People that were out of work, they finally got a book to read on how to motivate yourself. So that was easy to write for me because that was in the job I was. And when it came to my bio, it was different. And when people come to me with their thoughts, the first thing we start off with, have you journaled anything? Have you put it down on paper? Have you written anything? Let me know who you are. So I do a little bit of digging into who they are. And if it's fiction, we don't need to dig in. Well, really, I still find out the compound of the story, because you just can't. Some people are very lucky, Toni, they just sit down and pound out a book. That's what they do. And I think you are lucky to be able to do this, but they don't see it. That's what they do. Others, they tend to, like I do, I journal. And some people take a lifetime. Just absolute, the words are there, and it's frustrating for them. So that's when I come on board and think, let's untangle the wires. Let's see what you've got to say. Let's see what you've got to write about. And so I've never met anyone that's not yet been interesting or had a story to tell. We all have a story to tell, all of us.
Yes.
No matter what it is. When you write fiction, you're also writing your story.
And humans are unique, and their stories are unique. So you may think that you've got some similar, but the way you tell it, the way you speak, and the way you think, it's quite unique. You're a unique human being, and your writing is quite unique. That's correct, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, it is. People need to realize that too, that their story, no matter what genre it's in, fiction, non-fiction, bio, whatever, poetry, for instance, is really come back, really hit the high notes. And poets are coming out the woodwork, but only because, there's been 2 or 3 that have just stood up and said, I can do this. I'm a poet.
Yes.
Some of the poet, not all of the poetry sits with me. I must admit that, because it can be quite harsh. But I still admire the author.
Yes.
So it's like I've written poetry with a Japanese cohort, and that was fun, trying to understand each other, trying to get translated. We came up with a lot of, I can't say that because it's going to be naughty. So and also in the poetry industry, the way it's just blossomed is absolutely amazing. And I just applaud them. I've done a little bit of poetry, but I wouldn't call myself I'm not buffed with it. It's like I think I'll write some poetry for a day and then I'm back to story writing again. But what people don't realize is every time they breathe in and breathe out, there's a story there, absolute story there. Tell me, let's talk. The way I treat a client is tell me your story. And so they start talking about themselves. And when they wander off into what mum and dad did, I bring them back to their own emotional value in the story. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Because in every story, there's characters. So what's your process and recommendation when you start fleshing out, I guess, those characters in the story, whether it's your own story of fiction or whatever genre it is? Are there certain steps to making that character come alive for the reading audience?
Yeah, there's research. There is nothing like a good dose of research. So if you're writing fiction and you've got many characters and they're in different, and maybe you've gone back, just for instance, you're in the 18th century and you've written about an 18th century character, make sure that your terminology has been researched, because no one wants to hear about, like, just say a wise woman way out in the bush in the 18th century. She's not going to have an electric stove. Make sure the people know that she's got a campfire, she's got a cook. Those are the simple things. Just do your research. If you're writing about more modern day things, you still got to do your research. Make sure your terminology is correct so your audience understands where you're taking them to, because that's what people forget. You might be writing about yourself, but you're taking the reader on a journey.
And the characters actually have to go on that journey with you. And you don't want to actually make the character a fully blown character right at the beginning, or do you?
No, you eke it out. You drip feed your audience. It's you can bring your character in, and then slowly. Well, for me personally, I can't talk about any other writer, but for me personally, I like to introduce you in my book to the character, and then we slowly we undress the character.
Yes, yes. And when we talk about characters, we need to talk about their individual personality. So if you're creating a character in a story that is make-believe, I'm guessing that you can pretty much give them any sort of personality you want. So then does the writer then have to research individual personality types? Can they draw from their own experience and loosely base characters on real characters? I'm guessing that's pretty common for writers.
Of course, we don't know everybody. We don't know everybody's
No.
personality. So when you're writing about it, and it is a fiction story, by all means do your research. But there's a character on one of my books that I actually took out of an acquaintance who was severely bipolar. So
Yes.
I did my research with this acquaintance.
Yes.
She knew she was bipolar, but we never knew who we were going to get for the day. So she would switch.
Right.
She would literally switch characters as well. She was never cruel or mean or scary, but she never frightened me in any way. But I never knew. I'd walk in and say, "Oh, good morning, Peter," and all of a sudden
Yes.
it would be, "Who?" Yeah. So it would be, it was. They called it bipolar. I had other words for it, but it is what it is, and interesting. It's an interesting concept.
Did that make it fascinating and challenging for you as a writer to write about?
Yes, because the stories, if everything she had said was true, she would have been 3,000 years old. She would have been Methuselah. Yeah,
Yes.
but she knew her stuff too. That was the weird thing about it, because she had actually lived in her mind that life of that day she had lived.
Right.
And whether she'd read about it or done research or whatever she'd done, just say she was in one of my characters, that was this particular woman. Yeah, she was a woodcutter's wife. Well, she actually was a woodcutter's wife, but she was a modern day woodcutter's wife, and she had actually been in that situation. But the way she told it to me, I had to do my research on what a modern day woodcutter's wife was. But when she said woodcutter's wife, I went straight back to olden days, pioneer days of Australia and America, out with a great big great big saw between two men, chopping up trees manually. I never picked that she was talking about petrol driven saws way out in the forest cutting down trees, because the way she spoke to me. So I had to do my research and make sure that I knew exactly what she was talking about, because you can't bring a hand saw and then bring in an electric saw. You can't do it in a book unless you're time traveling, and it would have to be very, very fast sort of work to do. So again, it was all about research for her. She'd actually lived the life, but the way she spoke about it. And when you're writing about your characters, you have to make sure you keep them in the scene.
All right. I am just trying to get our guest onto our proper Zoom link. Can you tell the audience briefly about setting the scene for characters and some of your expertise in the importance of scene setting for characters?
Setting the scene is, it's really in your mind. It happens in your mind when you're writing it down. You have to set the scene. Now, it may happen it's already happened. You've created it in your mind. And And then I jot down many scenes that I think my character may suit if I'm writing in fiction. And if it's there's a lot of children's writers out there that totally fascinate me with where they take their readers. We go into space, and they've done their research, they've planted their scene on paper, then I've taught them to add the characters. So do you research, find out where your scene belongs.
And in developing those scenes, I'm just going to admit our guest for today. In developing those scenes, is it important to always use really descriptive information?
It pays to.
Yeah.
Otherwise you end up bland. It's a bland thing. People will skip the page and think it's bland. I'm not interested, so they
Yes.
skip pages. You don't want that. You want your reader to be
Yeah.
so involved that they are literally soaking up the words on each page. That's what you want.
Yeah. Kev, thank you for giving your expertise to the audience today. This morning we have, or this evening for France, we have Frantz Charles joining us. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Frantz first, and then we're going to introduce him live to the show. So Frantz is a well-renowned author who has experience in writing a variety of formats. And he's thrilled to develop a supportive readership across the globe. He's extremely proud and excited to share his latest work, the GCP The First Resurrection. The project in writing this has been a lengthy one, but the story really needed to be told. It's about parallel universes at play in a not so distant future in the GCP The First Resurrection. Planet Earth is being attacked by a set of gods led by the almighty goddess Vera. A pitched battle for the future of the universe commences, and the three teenagers that are instrumental in defending humanity from the demigods who are hell-bent on destroying them. Angela Lopez, a 17-year-old, fights depression along with alien forces and discovers her superpowers. My apologies. Cade Walker is a 16-year-old with conflicting alliances as he commits to protecting Alice, his pregnant lover. Cade's half-brother, Colvin Walker, is 18-year-old and a cold-blooded captain who is the leader in the war for heaven. Sparks fly as the clash between competing universes begins. The stakes for the world's survival are high in a richly layered story set in an imaginary world of adventure, mystery, and excitement. Frantz is passionate about writing and storytelling, as both Kez and I are, and we are delighted to welcome Frantz to the show this morning. Good evening, Frantz.
Thank you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to meet both of you. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to meet you live on the show today. We had a little technical issue with the link that we provided for Frantz, so I'm terribly sorry, my good friend, for not getting you on sooner, but that's okay. We've got the rest of the show to spend with you. Now, in talking about your show, you have elements of diversity in your story, but Frantz, why do you think diversity in literature is so important?
Diversity, in my opinion, is very, very important. I feel like diversity is one of the best ways to connect to audience. You can write a single character for a story, and some people may not relate to it because it's so single focused on, based off that person's background or religion or skin color. And so me including diversity, it really helps with connecting people to a certain story, idea, and ideology. So I think diversity is everything and helps connect to people more.
It's really
what does the word diversity?
Sorry, Kev, you go.
The word diversity, Frantz, is it's a large word and encompasses a lot of things. So if that's what it means to you, diversity, what do you think it means to your readers?
Diversity to my readers, honestly, is different background, having a different understanding a different mindset. So, for example, the GCP, when you look at the book, there's 4 different people. One of them has Hispanic background. Another one has a European background. Another one has an African background. And so for them, it's, you know what? And I have people told me, you know what? I connect more with Addis. She's from Ethiopia. You know what? I connect more with Angela. She has a Hispanic background. So to them, it's my background with them and how we were raised is similar to her, and I can understand her, why she's the way she acts. So to me, I think that's why they see diversity, based off their background, how they grew up.
I found the title of the book really fascinating. So the GCP, or is it the GPG?
The GCP.
Sorry.
GCP. No, you're fine.
Explain. The title fascinates me. And I find that if I went to buy a book, if I was just a reader and went to buy a book from a bookstore, what do you think would attract your client more, the title or the cover of the book?
Good question. Honestly, I think it'd be the title, because someone says, well, what does that mean? Whenever they see the GCP, the first thing they think about, well, what does it mean? What does the GCP mean? And then I have other people say, wow, I love the color, the cover, but it'd most likely be the title. And that's how really I pulled them in, because then I get to tell them what it means and what's it about.
I find with a lot of with my books, they say I love the cover, and then they read the title. So I get sometimes I find it offensive as an author that people are not reading the title; they're going for the cover. That's how you felt about that, because I've seen the cover of your book and I thought it was really attractive, but your title really made me stop and think. I wonder what it means.
Yes,
yeah, and then to read the blurb on the back was amazing. Yeah, so well done.
Thank you. And I do want to thank my agent, Eric Miller, who helped me with the description in the back. So I do want to thank him too, who read it and said, you know what, let's make this.
So how do you feel about writing the bit on the back, what we call the blurb? As writers, we call it the blurb on the back. What do you feel about that?
I originally had it centered on just Angela, but I did want to give them the audience, or well, the potential readers, the story and also different characters, because the story revolves around 4 characters. So I didn't want to just add one person but 4. So I said, you know what, Eric, let's make the blurb on the back about the 4 characters, who really is in a general sense as small as possible. And so we did that in a way where it's small, but tells the 4 characters, but also it tells you about what the story is about in a generalization way, in a general way.
Okay. So I only saw the cover. I didn't get to read the blurb on the back. So I'm looking forward to it. Toni, over to you.
Thanks, Kate. The GCP, The First Resurrection. Can you tell us what inspired you to write this? Because it's a big creative saga. What was the inspiration behind it?
Honestly, the story took years to develop. The inspiration behind it was, and it's called God's Chosen People, because I personally believe everybody's chosen. That's why on the cover, ahead of the cover, it says many are called, but few are chosen. And I personally believe everybody has a calling, no matter what you believe in or whatever it is. Everybody is called. Everybody was put here for a reason, and we're all called. Nobody is just here just to be here. I think we all have a purpose. We have a calling, whether it's with our gifts, our mind, whatever it is we use, it's to help others and be a blessing to somebody. What inspired it behind that as well was different people. I'm a mentor, and I've seen so many people, different backgrounds, with losing a mother or having an identity issue, or, I don't want to be like my dad. And so all these different stuff that these young adults faced, and I've heard so many stories, I've implemented it into these characters. And I wanted to show these readers there's a way out. This toxic stuff people were born with, there's a way out. And so I showed it through these characters.
Frantz, we're learning more and more that some of the trauma that we carry as humans is passed down from generation to generation. And I actually had the thought this morning that I wanted to ask you, as a beautiful young African American man writing in such a powerful way, do you want to make a difference to your generation? So it's okay for us in Australia to look on and see what's happening in America, but just reading about you and what you do, I wondered if behind what you do led into the publication of this first book.
Yeah. Everything I do, my mission in this life, my personal mission is to help somebody, each one teach one. I know many people say that,
Yes.
but I'm using my gift, my knowledge, my wisdom, my experience to help someone else out. So whether it's writing a book and telling about Angela who lost her mother and is fighting depression, or Cade Walker who has a pregnant girlfriend and he's in a toxic relationship, or Cade or any other character who has a difficult background, I want to show, hey, I've been there, or I know someone and there's a way out. I want to help other people. And one of the things I'm doing right now is helping juvenile people who are incarcerated. That's one of the things I'm working on personally. So
Yes.
I do want to give back and help out any way I can.
Yeah. Hez has got the next question for you, Frantz.
So, Frantz, in your book, you're almost mentoring young ones. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you actually physically mentor other writers?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah. So what I did was I helped, when we usually link up on Zoom or a regular phone call, and I would help out these young men. Usually just a small group, usually around 8 to 12, 8 to 10. And then we just help out and mentor these men the proper way, to raise them, because they're taught the wrong way.
Do you find that in your mentoring life that things are getting more and more difficult for our young ones to understand what life's all about?
Yeah, I think because they're brought up by wrong teaching sometimes. Sometimes kids, and I say this sometimes, most kids, usually who are my skin color, are brought up with the wrong foundation, or they don't have a foundation at all. So they're passed down from just debunked myths, debunked mindsets from people, where they look up to artists or whatever the case may be, who weren't taught well, but they passed down through their music or whatever the wrong mindset and ideology, and it's just a continuous cycle.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So if you, being a mentor myself, I'm very interested. I call myself a writing consultant here in Australia, but I know that in the USA it's called a writing coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a lot of young ones, which I pass on to a younger generation to teach to write. But I'm also finding that it's the people in their, say, 20s to 40s that are trying to write and are getting unstuck. They don't know what to write about. So if I came to you as a 30-year-old and said, look, I've got a story, it's about my past, which was pretty violent, this is what I said to you, how would you start me writing a book?
Honestly, for me, and what I tell people that as well, is before you start writing, plan it out, put out major points. What was the highlight in your bad past? What is something you can remember? It's like, this was the height or the peak of, like, yo, was really life changing for me. Plan it out. Plan out what you want. Make it the climax, or talk about it. Make it to a character, whether it's a memoir or you want to use it to make it fiction. Flesh it out. I think the most part about writing, what people don't see, is when you're in the dark, meaning the writing process, as in planning it out, making the characters before you even start writing. So I would say plan before you write.
Okay.
That's what makes the story powerful, really.
So in all your characters, you already had them planned out. You already knew what their names, what they were going to do, the genre of their life. You knew all that before you wrote the book.
Yeah, to be honest, and I don't mean to get personal, but to be honest, each of those characters have a piece of me or what I personally saw and experienced. So with, you know, Angela, who had who battled depression, I battled depression. Someone like Cade, who's in a toxic relationship with somebody he loved, I felt that, and I put that in those characters, and really try to basically make it as real as possible, flesh out the characters, and use my personal experience and what I saw and put into those characters so they're more real and not really just bland characters.
That's what makes an excellent writer, is being so involved. I too see things in myself that I like my characters to wear as a badge, actually. So I put a little bit of my character into a little bit of my personality into my characters. So then I think you get you build up this long list of what you want your character to either contain or attain to. So yeah, that's what I enjoy about writing and building up characters as well. Toni.
So, Frantz, my next question was about the age group that your book attracts. I'm also wondering about your vision for that particular age group. In writing the book, did you want to attract them to see characters that would inspire them in their lives?
So for me, it was, the age range was really young adults to adults, preteens, adolescents, you know, starting up. I want them to say, you know, I've been depressed, just like Angela, or I lost a parent just like Angela, or my dad, I felt neglected by my dad. He was present at home, but he really wasn't there emotionally, just like Coven.
Yeah.
And I'm learning and I'm connecting with these characters, and I see how he made a way out and how it bettered him, how he became better over time. I resonate with that character. That character is a hero to me personally. He lives in my heart. That's what I want.
Fantastic. Frantz, in thinking about the young people, particularly African American youth in America, do you see in your generation more and more people like you trying to get the next generation to a better place? Because from the outside looking in, from Australia, we see these huge problems for particularly the diverse Americans. And I'm just wondering, you're in America, you write to inspire and encourage. Do you see this changing in your generation? Do you believe that you will have that impact that changes your generation and the future generations of African Americans?
Absolutely. And we're starting, and I say it's not a race, but it's a journey. So I won't rush it, but one day at a time, you know. And one of the things I realized to be, or one of the things that leader holds is, you know, acquiring wisdom and being a good example and showing that through action, and just having a lot of influence too. And I've been doing that recently, and everybody's been looking and turning. So you know what? Frantz is doing something. You know what? He wrote a book. Great. Wow. What's it about? Oh man, if he can do it, then I can do it. And I'm seeing how he is. He changed the way. Like I was born in not the best parts, but I grew, and thank God to my parents, they took me out to a better environment. And you know, they're saying, hey, if Frantz can do it from the low parts and rise, then I can do it too.
Yeah. Because you must be an inspiration to a whole generation of young people, because you're a businessman, an author, a mentor, and from my perspective, there doesn't seem to be a lot of young men your age doing that sort of thing. Do you feel that you want to be a beacon for young people?
Yeah, you're absolutely all right. You're absolutely right. Everything you're saying is right, and I do want to be that beacon of light, like, and of hope, and say, you know what, that's Frantz. I'm gonna do it. You know, and I've been doing that too. You know, talking to, because a lot of young men don't. A lot of men, they want the opportunity, and unfortunately, they don't have that opportunity, or they don't have that voice. But I work hard so I can be that person and pull them out and say, you know what, here, I want to help you. and do that. And that's why I said I want to talk to people who are in jail and whatnot. And that's what I'm right now currently doing. Sometimes they don't know their purpose or their destiny, or they don't have a vision for where they want to go. Sometimes they just want to chase money sometimes, or just do this, or just have something tangible. But if I can give them a vision, a purpose, and make that clear to them, they can walk straight, walk to where they're called to be, and make a difference and change another person too.
Yeah, because it does start with just one person showing the way, doesn't it? Because one person can have a ripple effect across a community and a locality and a generation. And I can hear in your voice and see in your demeanor a beautiful spirit of inspiration and mentorship. And I'm so glad that you've taken the time to write a book that showcases what is possible, but in a way that is easy relatable. So young people reading this story are likely to get the messages, but not in a teacher pupil kind of way. They're getting the message via the story that you tell and the interweaving of the characters' wonderful personality traits.
Yes.
I think that, I think that this first novel of yours will lead on to others. Is that the plan, Frantz?
Yeah, that is the plan. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I do plan on there's some series to this. It's supposed to be a 5-book series, so that's what I'm set to make another one and work on middle grade. I'm focused just on the youth right now because if I can focus on the youth, I can focus on the effect of the next generation. So yeah, but there is supposed to be a second book. There is.
Well, if we are able to connect with our young people and give them education, understanding, and show them a better way, that leads them to then change, and they're not then stuck in that cycle of generation after generation of the same thing. And I'm seeing and hearing in what you're saying that's your longer plan, is to try and break some of that generational stuff that is right across America at the moment.
Yeah. So in different races or religion, they call it sometimes a generational curse or a generation debunked mindset.
Yes.
Whatever the case they want to call it, but we do want to break that. We do want to say, hey, this way that people from previous generations saying it's bad, there's something else you can do. You don't have to always think that same way because it's not working now. Maybe it could have worked for your grandparents, but it's not working now.
Yes.
And using our mouth, whether through vocally or through any talent you have, can help somebody.
Yeah. I think Kez has the next question for you. Kez?
You talk about your next book, Toni. Sorry, Frantz. Who am I talking to here? I'm talking to Frantz. You're talking about your next book. In your next book, will it follow on in the same genre as your first book?
Yes, it is. Me and my agent were working on that. The second book is actually supposed to be a continuous of the GCP. And then my agent's also talking to me about a prequel we can do based off the parents' life as well, and toward it towards middle grade. And so I'm working on just 2 projects, and then I'm going to give them to my agent. But I want to continue off with that.
Okay. And do you find that when you're working on the 2 different books, your brain has to switch to 2 different ages? So, if you're writing, say, for your actual book is aimed at like a late teen, and then you go into a younger person, your brain will definitely have to switch. Do you find that hard?
Yeah, well, not really hard, but and that's the thing. I study a lot before I execute, because I think proper planning prevents poor action. So going to middle grade, no, I can't do like super be complicated with the sentences. I got to keep it short and simple.
That's right.
So that's different from young adults. So I do know there's certain rules that doesn't apply to middle grade that applies to young adults. So I always keep that in mind when writing middle grade.
Okay. So what ages would you call middle grade in over in the USA?
Middle grade would be 8 years old to 12 years old.
Gosh, that's a hard group to write for. I don't envy you that one. That's a really hard group because they're growing, their minds are expanding, and you've got to keep up with it. You know, I so enjoy writing for the adult world, because when I write, I've written children's stories and I have to remember to keep the words small, short, and understandable. So I don't envy you at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I gotta realize, and I was taught that, like, you know, your childhood, I know you want to write in middle grade, but your childhood isn't the same as the children who are in 2020. So try not to bring that same thing into that. And so I'm that's why I'm at the stage of just learning middle grade before I start actually writing. So I wrote a little bit, but I want to learn more about it and then do that.
So when you do research, do you would you consider going into a classroom and just be there as a, what do we call it, a viewer, or would you join in a student class to do the research and see how they take on their learning?
Recently, like 2 days ago, I've been, because of this whole COVID and whatnot, I've just been watching and studying, like, through YouTube, kids, what they like, how they talk, how they view the world, what they do in this instance. And so now I'm putting myself in a child's mindset, like behind there, and just really see how they interact and how they view something.
Yeah.
Because it's different towards a teenager. They would think different.
That's right.
You know, for example, a teenager, he has a crush, but he'd go more to like dating and kissing, as opposed to a middle grade. They won't have that. A kid would just have a major crush. Oh, she's cute, you know? And so that's something I would know and I would implement. Like, hey, we can't do that. It's a middle grade. So the child wouldn't go ahead and try to kiss a girl or whatnot. They would have it mainly a crush. So yeah.
Have you found that the thinking process has changed considerably from when you were a child?
Yeah. Time has changed and the thinking has changed, especially with what's going on in this world. We're more accepting and whatnot. And so, which isn't a bad thing. I think that's good. But where we were from at the time is different from today's time. We're more accepting and more open. We're encouraging our kids to do that now. And we're so anti-bullying now, which is amazing. So, and kids wanting to be this or that. So it is different from my timing, and I'm aware of that.
So what do you enjoy most, Frantz? Is it writing or being a mentor?
Well, I'm very passionate about writing. I'm a creative head, but the foundation is teaching. Teaching, which is mentoring. I think that's the core, honestly, because I wouldn't write anything if it's not teaching nobody. And that's the thing with any project I do. What's the message, the theme behind it? Because if it's not teaching nobody, I'm wasting my time, honestly, despite how creative it is. And that's how I see it. So I think mentoring and teaching is where I'm at.
It's fabulous. Yeah. So your next book, what's it going? You know, I know it's going to carry on from your first book, but is the journey going to change for you?
The journey? It's a good question. It's a good question. The second book for me, I'm more focused on, I'm implementing now another chapter in my life. I'm going to put that in the character. So now it's how did I heal from that traumatic experience and implement that to Angela.
That's good.
How did she get over depression? How did she get over losing her parent? How does she, you know what I mean? What does she look towards it? Now, what's her foundation? How is she going to build herself up from the low to the high? We're at that stage now. The writing process for me is like, there's 5 books I plan on making for the GCP. The second one, how does their character change in their environment? How does it change? And so for me, it's the second book is how did I overcome and how did I change in 2 years after that situation happened? How can I put that in my character? So now that's the mindset now.
Yeah, there's a lot of research in there.
Yeah. Frantz, can we ask about that particular situation? And you've talked a little bit about your battle with depression. Can we ask about that today? What tipped you into depression, and what did you do to get through that?
Yeah, for me, I've 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 been in toxic relationships,
Yeah.
where you, how can I say this? Sometimes you got to go against your and actually sometimes you got to go against your own heart, because your heart can fool you sometimes.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
with me is I've been in toxic relationships. I've been and because I was in a toxic relationship, and I know if I respect myself, I would leave. I should leave. So when I left,
Yes.
I was dealt with depression, you know.
Yes.
But then I had to learn to love myself. So I had to take time to be with myself, you know.
Yeah.
I've learned even with other men when I mentor, I stood side by side with them. They didn't like their dad, or they didn't want to be like their dad. Their dad did this all the time. For example, their dad was an alcoholic, and he's seen it all the time. Now
Yes.
his mission is I want to be anti-alcohol, and I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like my dad or my uncle. And so I'm just gonna live a healthy lifestyle. And so
Yeah.
it was just loving myself first, taking the time to know who I was and be grounded, based and be a man of principle, morals. You know,
Yeah.
that will ground me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that a young man like yourself is writing and talking openly and honestly about a battle with depression. I suffer from depression and anxiety too, and it has been a lifelong battle for me to rise above that and to even to talk about it. So it took me until my 40s to recognize that that was the basis of bad decision making, because fundamentally I didn't like myself. Do
Mhm.
you see the importance, Franz, or as a young man writing about depression? Because men struggle to talk about that sort of stuff, don't they?
Yeah, that's a really a great point. I was teaching this to a lot of people. Women, when they have an issue, they'll express it. They're more expressive.
Yes.
Men, they're in a cave. Men are in a cave
Yep.
mentally. They're in a cave. They're trying to figure out the issue. For an example, a
Yeah.
wife tells her husband, "Hey, our son is doing this," and she's like, "Are you going to say anything? Or are you doing anything? Or are you just going to keep watching TV?" He just stares off. And then a week later, he comes back. You know what? I'm gonna go talk to him. And the wife was like, "What are you talking about?" He was like, "You told me about our son, da da da." And she was like, "Oh, I'm over it."
Yes.
For example, you know, in his head that whole week
Yeah.
he was processing it. You know, he's going through a battle sometimes. You know, if he loses something or
Yes.
he has cancer or he lost his job, that's what, you know, for men. If I have money, that's security. I can help my family. But if I don't have that, now I'm in a turmoil. Now I'm in a battle, and I won't tell my wife because
Yes.
I don't want to look weak, but I want to. I want to be that provider. So he's dealing with his head, but after so long, some men don't leave the cave, and that's why statistically most men do
Yes.
suicide. Most men, 80%
Yes.
of suicide are from men. You know,
Yes,
so yeah,
absolutely. The statistics are similar across Australia too, and often men will die before they ask for help or express or talk about what's going on in their heads. And to see a young man like you openly talk about this, that's a great thing for men across the world, young men in particular, because we need to be creating a world where it's okay for them to say, I'm struggling. I don't know how to get through this. I don't know what to do. And that's okay for them to express that, particularly for young men. Friend, is that part of what drives you, is making sure that young men don't suffer like you've suffered, or help them get through that process?
yeah, yeah. And I want to be the change. Someone recently told me, because I just hit my local newspaper, and someone said, you know, that's really motivational to see where you come from and really do something big.
Yes.
Um, in the African American community, they said there's a crab barrel mentality, and what that is, if you see a crab in a barrel, they'll always pull each other down, but they'll never help each other. And so I want to be that change.
Oh no.
You know,
Mm.
you know, they say Black entrepreneurs, they lack a foundation because there's no help. And so I want to be that person to help. I want to say, you know what? I have my hand in the literature industry. Let me help you with that. I have my hand in the film industry. Let me help you with that. I have my hand in psychology and just helping them. Let me help you with that so I can connect you to other people. Let me do that because I want to help people ultimately. And I think for me, or any great business person, you want to come up as you want to serve. If you can serve your audience, serve them, you would end up and at the end help yourself. So being selfless and helping people
Exactly.
serve them is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Yeah, you need to. I think with every serious writer, we actually sometimes unravel our own situation as we write, because we put our situation into the character. You can actually hide behind your own character and solve your problems. I find that so interesting with many writers. But Frantz, I have a question here for you. And if you had the chance to take your 10-year-old self for a little talk, what would you say to him?
I would say, honestly, love you and don't look for validation for anyone, for love or for anything. Love you first and get to know you and love you.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's very important. I would say that to myself.
And do you think the Frantz that you remember as a 10-year-old would have paid attention?
I'll probably say, well, what truly is love? A lot of people think they know what that is, but I would tell them really what love is. So yeah.
Fabulous, yeah.
Frantz, that 10-year-old self, I guess from my very female perspective, and it's been one of my struggles too, is learning about self-love and self-care. And I too would really like to sit down with 10-year-olds and go, everything you need is within yourself. And if you know and trust yourself and realize that you are this amazing, unique, wonderful human being, if we could implant that in the minds of 10-year-olds across humanity, we would really change the world, wouldn't we, Frantz?
Yeah, and it'd bring about more confidence. And they have more faith within themselves. Because I did say, and I want to add, and I taught this, you're fully packaged. You don't need, you're fully packaged. Just like animals, just like plants, and a polar bear is set in one of the coldest places on the planet. But he's fully packaged. He has the fur to survive. He has everything, just like a human. Where you're at, you maybe have dealt with the wrong cards being birthed in life, but you're still packaged. You got a gift. You got wisdom you can attain. And I feel like everybody's packaged with what they need to be successful in life. They just need to know how to use that.
I agree. Yeah.
Frantz, we're almost out of time, but I just wanted to quickly touch on your life as a businessman. Can we quickly just tell the audience what your business looks like and how you got into that?
Yes. So right now, I do want to help people with the publishing. And so I'm helping people with publishing and consultation. One of my biggest goals is to be a filmmaker. And so I made my own film production. And so I'm getting into that. And really, I want to transform every book or idea into film to reach a larger audience. And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
So right now it's a publication, my own publication, and my own full production. That's it.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Frantz, thank you so much. It's been an inspiration talking to you today. Just a reminder to our listening audience that you can connect with Frantz at frantzcharles.com, and it's the same website. For those of you listening on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, the links will be popped into the chat box by Payo, who's listening for our comments today. You'll also find information about Frantz on radiotoni.com. And I encourage you, if you're a young person listening to our interview today and you're stuck, you need help, you've got an idea for a book, please reach out and talk to Frantz. He is an amazing, inspirational, wonderful human being, and it's been his and my pleasure to have him live on the show today. Frantz, thank you so much.
Thank you, Frantz. It's been lovely talking to you.
Yes, it was a pleasure talking to you both.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there is yes, please keep writing. What you do it will have an impact, and we're just really grateful for your time on the show today. And that, my friends, is our lot for this week. We'll be back next week with another author. Friends, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Audience, please reach out and connect with Frantz. If you are a young person, particularly a young bloke, and you want to know how to get your ideas down onto paper, connect with Frantz. We encourage you to do that today. Grab the book, the GCP,
Yeah.
the GCP. I can hear the words in my head. I just can't get the letters out. The GCP, The First Resurrection, the first of many books from Frantz, and we encourage you to jump on and find that book now. We've got links, will be on the channel, also on radiotoni.com. Thank you, everyone, today. Bye, Frantz, and thanks, Kez. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.